Well, I want to get down to reality situation. Actually, there's a lot of things going on past the numbers because I know when a lot of people look at the numbers, they got a lot of damn giddy rumors out there. I guess it's reality, but the reality situation is this. America's changed actually at its core roots. In other words, the people themselves. There's corruption going on in Washington, D.C., there's corruption going on in Wall Street. There's always been corruption. But there's also a rot that's going on throughout America itself with the people. And this is really 99% of the problem because we've always had problems and we've always gotten through them. But it's not this the type of situation we're going into now is that the actual core element that makes up the average American is far different than what it was even 30 years ago, but tremendously different from what it was 150 years ago. So, I mean, yes, you could say, yeah, there's always been corruption in Washington, there's always been corruption in Wall Street, but the thing that's always made it go is the average American. Today, there's far more people involved in the finance and accounting system. One reason I got out of that because I got no respect for that kind of garbage. And there's a lot less people involved in actual skilled labor or farming. One of the things that's actually going to bring down this entire system itself, and one of the reasons you should keep shiny silver coins because it's going to be one of the few hard assets that's going to be going up that's around today, is one of the things that's actually going to be more exemplary than even silver coins is going to be agriculture. Agriculture, and the reason being is not going to be because of major problems in the economy per se, or some currency crisis, or something going on behind the scenes with secret funds of the the Bank of International Settlements or the Exchange Stabilization Fund or the Federal Reserve policy. It's actually going on because we're getting into another crisis due to a global climate cooling, which is another grand solar minimum, which happens every 400 years. With today's population, that's going to have very, very, very serious repercussions for the global economy and actually just feeding everybody on this earth. The reason it'll have serious repercussions for the global economy is because the average person who spends a certain percentage of their money on food and rent, you might say, well, they might forego paying the rent to pay the food, but they're not going to have anything left over or not much left over to support the retail sector of the economy, or more importantly, the entertainment sector of the economy, which seems to be the biggest sector of the economy going on right now. Now, I know a lot of people talk about, there's going to be a reset and then everything's going to change. We're going to be a walk in the park. And then when there's a reset, we're just going to exchange our silver for gazillions of the new whatever currency it is. But I can tell you right now, the thing is, it's not going to be a reset like that. It's going to be a series of resets. They're going to simplify the system when it gets too cumbersome and overbearing, and they'll just streamline it a little bit when they don't get enough money in, just like Governor Christie did with, I wonder how many permits he sold for $450 for 180 days to shovel snow in New Jersey. So they finally got rid of that permit, and they made it sound like, oh, we're really magnanimous, and we're just going to let you freaking shovel snow as an entrepreneur without a permit. Wow, great. You're wonderful. But I have to say this, the real problem, though, is just how everybody has changed in America. If the Republicans put up this guy, yeah, I smoke crack, what the hell are you going to do about it, against Hillary Clinton, he'd probably have a very good chance of beating her. Somebody like that was a veteran or a war hero or had Senate experience, who was a former Secretary of Navy, like the Democrats had with Jim Webb, he doesn't even have a chance getting off to start to even go to first base, whereas people that are diehard socialist communists and control freaks like Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, they're almost did the home run, did a home stretch. One of those two is going to be it. Well, really, what's going on here? Is it just Wall Street? No, it's not just Wall Street. It's the American people. So, it'd been unthinkable that people like that would be that far ahead in the elections. And so that's why I really say we're up to the reality situation is far graver than you think. People are always focusing in on the elite. Well, it's not just that. It's really what's going on across the board. And, that's really been one of the freaking modus operandi of the KGB, but I think it's the modus operandi of the elite, too. corrupt the youth, to corrupt the average person enough that they're focused in on trivia and garbage, and everybody's worried about what new apps they have for their iPhone or something, or I got to get an Apple Watch. Like, that's so important. Can you imagine getting an Apple Watch for $400 when you can get a Casio solar powered watch for $33, and you can get yourself a welder or something, and I don't know, a new kitchen set, for crying out loud, in Craigslist, and still have money left over for like what a watch would cost you. But people are doing that type of stuff. But behind the scenes, we got the Hildebeest, and the Hildebeest is actually far beyond what people think. I'm going to tell you something with this Hildebeest. This is her, actually, without the skin. The Hildebeest is actually far worse than you think. Now I'm getting information that she probably will not really be charged by the FBI. I'm going to tell you something about. It sounds unrelated, but it's all related to like what I'm talking about. The reality situation. The reality situation is that the corruption and rot is not just in with the elite Wall Street politics. It's all throughout the United States. It's actually, a lot of Americans have gotten lazy, lethargic. Yeah, there's a lot of people in here that are working hard, but overall, it's not like it used to be. Now, maybe when they get they're pushed to the wall, it might change. I don't know, but there's too many people on the grain dole from the government, and there's too many people seeking answers from the government than actually from, their own inner will. That tough entrepreneur, rugged individualism type spirit is not there as much, as it used to be. Nowhere near as like it used to be. There's some people like that, but not generally speaking. Now, I want to tell you something about Hildebeest I think that you might find interesting. Now, I know, like with, I'm going to diverge here for a second, but it's all related to the reality situation and why things are probably going to get a lot worse than you think, without trying to be a doom and gloomer here. But when you talked about the Sandy Hook massacre shooting, which a lot of people say never occurred in Connecticut, I've looked on, let's say, Amazon.com was one place where they had book reviews talking about that, and we're not talking about saying it was a hoax. They were just writing about it. There was a number of people that commented it that were just like regular mainstream middle-class people that said the whole thing was a hoax. I saw on a lot of major media sites when they talked about the Sandy Hook school shooting, a lot of people said it was a hoax. So, I mean, it's like, it's probably true, right? I mean, I think it is. I think it was a hoax. I mean, that Wolfgang Halbig has really been strong on pushing out why there's a lot of number of discrepancies that went on. But within that agenda that was out there to disarm the American people due to the school shooting, there was Governor Malloy involved in Obama, but also two other elements, Hillary Clinton and the FBI, allegedly. So they're all in bed together. So the FBI is not going to charge somebody like Hillary Clinton who's in bed with them, and they're all doing the same damn thing with corruption or doing, losing state secrets to foreign powers or being careless with top secret information. And that's now in the hands of foreign powers and jeopardizing our, people abroad that are working for our country clandestinely. I don't think they will. So I think when actually the shit goes down, though, it's going to be all of them are going to go down, including the Hillary Clinton, the political system, the FBI, the CIA, and the whole 9 yards, and the American people, all at once. So one of the backstops you could do is silver, but basically beyond that, what's more important than that is food, firepower, and fuel. No doubt about it. You got to look at things from all angles, It's like you just can't be looking at the situation from, the straight up and down angle straight on, because the times comes when you have to think, and, there's a curve coming up in the road. You don't do the same thing as you're doing going down the straightaway like normal times. Extraordinary times require extraordinary measures. Now, I know a lot of people saying, like, when the reset comes, like, here's the reset, the kids are on the ground, we're starting from day one, the reset's here, we're going to change the wheel, right? We're going to put the new wheel on, fix the economy or whatever. Now, I don't think there's going to be just one reset. It's almost like that example, what I said with Governor Christie, when he says, oh, we're going to relax the law on a snow shoveling or whatever, the $450 permit. They might they simplify, streamline the government a little more because they're losing money, but they'll downsize everything, they'll streamline everything, and it'll keep it going for a little longer. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be, going on like that forever. Because the only thing that's actually going to correct the situation, it's not even so much as a moral Christian thing or anything, but because it's almost like you almost look at what Rome was before it became an empire and they had a grain dole. Everybody was an independent farmer. The military was taken from the independent farmers who volunteered for the military themselves. Today, a lot of people don't even want to get their hands dirty. A lot of people will not do that. They want to have a special title, they want to have a special job, and they do not want to get down into the dirt and the nitty-gritty. Actually, I'm going to tell you, I think, though, that farming is going to be one of the most lucrative things out there. Even if you just have a simple garden, it's going to be very, very helpful for your financial picture. Now, as far as silver goes, though, to give an example, maybe this is not a hardcore one-to-one example, but if you look in Venezuela, you got the exchange rate to the bolivar to the dollar, right? It's 6-to-1 or something like that. If you go stick a dollar in an ATM, you get 6 bolivars out or something like that. Well, if you go on a black market, it's like 500 or 600 to 1. I think the reality situation is I think that's actually going to come about even in the silver markets. I don't trust this spot market for nothing. I mean, it was BS from day one. As a matter of fact, if you're looking on, what's going on with the mining companies, what's going on with the natural gas companies, what's going on in the fracking industry, they're all getting slaughtered. Now, I know part of that is because, like in the oil industry and stuff, there is a conspiracy, I could say right now, between the U.S. and Saudi to kind of bring down Russia. They want to break Russia. It's pretty much outlined in major media that they expect Russia to fall apart, and then the U.S. is going to have to come in here and take over their nuclear arsenal. But I don't think Russia's going to fall apart that fast or that easily, because a lot of people in Russia know how to do things on their own. And the other thing is, you could see how the Russian military was highlighted in Syria just recently, going against ISIL or ISIS or whatever you want to call it. They were doing very well. They have a number of high-tech weapons. They're far more ahead than anybody suspected, especially like cruise missiles and things, the planes. The American military brass was talking about, how there's, how Russia, they're highly impressed that Russia moved that many men and materials that fast in that many quantities in such a short period of time. They're far more advanced than they suspected. Now, what I used to read all the way back through the 90s was how Russia was really not concentrating on its typical conventional forces. They're letting that just go to pot. But what they're really concentrating on was the new weapon systems and the new technologies and new strategies. And a lot of people were saying, oh, no, they can't keep up with us. And I was like, these other people were saying other things. And, it looks that's the situation. Actually, Russia is saying this, and they've always said this from way back when. And there's been other theories out there that they've been playing possum when they fell apart in 88 to 91. The Russian Empire really came down, or the Soviet Empire, Soviet bloc came down. That they were playing possum was a long-range strategic deception. That some decades down the line, they're expecting a total financial collapse in the West, and at which time they will strike militarily. Maybe that'll happen. If that happens, silver can go to any freaking price. It can go to $100 an ounce, no problem. Now, I also want to talk something about the, some of the other things in the economy, like the GDP. The GDP, when you're looking at the U.S. GDP, you're saying, well, the GDP's up, the GDP's this, the GDP's that. But how much of the GDP is about pharmaceutical drugs and psychotropic depressants, antidepressants? How much of it is that? A lot of times people are talking about the economy, but how much of the economy is just based upon even the psychiatric field, which to me is one of the most lucrative and harmful and evil fields there is. They're passing out, anybody that's actually in that field pretty much, they got this diagnostics manual that can diagnose anybody with any kind of disease and give them medicines for profit. And, Meantime, they're lining their pocket for $500,000 a year or more and selling more drugs. And, oh, wow, the economy's really stimulated because of that. But really, what are they doing? That's why I look at the numbers sometimes and I say the numbers are not really a reflection of, even when the numbers are going up, are not necessarily a reflection of the true economic health of the United States overall. And then sometimes when the numbers are going down, if the numbers were going down and everybody turned into a rugged individualist that can grow their own food, do their own repairs in their house and their car, and pretty much do everything on their own, and they didn't have as much money, but they could do everything they needed to do, well, in reality situation, everybody'd be better off if that was the case. So, you can have the numbers where everybody's making a lot of money, but maybe they're not really having as much, or they're not really as well off. So, that's why this GDP number thing, I don't really trust, even if it's accurate, what's in it? What is it? What is it? GDP of Netflix and pharmaceutical drugs? What is it? GDP of what? Is it GDP of hardcore manufacturing items that people can use that are capital assets that'll help them, enjoy their lives or enrich their lives for many years to come? Or is it dependencies on things? Or just entertainment and fluff? What is it? Now, I can tell you, though, I think a lot of people are going to blame Janet Yellen on all that stuff. And then, you can blame Janet Yellen. You can blame the Wall Street. You can blame George Soros. You can blame the Bank of International Settlements. You can blame the Exchange Stabilization Fund or something, or whatever, the New World Bank. But the reality of the situation is that much of the blame is actually going to come from the American people themselves. When I look at somebody like Hillary Clinton, for instance, getting away with so much bullshit like this, she's not just getting away with it because, everybody in the United States is against them. No, she's got a lot of support. A lot of people are that stupid. This isn't even about politics, because it's like, that lady's just a freaking piece of garbage from hell, man. There's no doubt about it. And, when I look at, she's number one, leading the Democratic Party with Bernie Sanders nipping at her heels, but Bernie Sanders is still, a communist socialist all the way. And you got somebody like Jim Webb, a former senator, former decorated Vietnam veteran with a Navy Cross, Silver Star, 2 bronze stars, and 2 Purple Hearts, and a former Secretary of the Navy, also an award-winning publicist and a teacher of military strategy. And this guy can't even get off the plate to run the freaking first base. He's so far behind. What's wrong? What's wrong with the American public? Why do they get behind Hillary Clinton over that guy? I'm saying to myself, there's excessive rot. And, it's going to be reflected when we have a food crisis, and, these people are going to be saying, well, the government's got to fix the prices on the food, and the government's got to stop the black market of the food prices, because, we got a natural cooling cycle coming up where it's going to be much shorter growing season. And everybody's going to be saying, oh, it's this, it's that, and you got to fix it, and you got to do something. What about the mayor? What about the governor? What about my representative? What are you going to do? Well, they're not going to get out there and drive a tractor and freaking fix the food price, fix the food problems. No, they're not going to fix the economy. They're your representative. You elected them to do a job. All the economy comes from you. See, that's the problem right there. And most people aren't thinking that way anymore. Most people look into the government, and that's why they look into people like Hillary and Bernie to take care of us. That's why the reality of the situation is it's going down. And I'm not going to be, trying to freaking save these people that went halfway off the cliff and me go along with them when it happens. It's not that I'm being mean about it, but it's like, if they're halfway down a cliff and they're falling, hey, you've been warned. It's just like the story with the 3 pigs and a wolf that blows on the houses. One builds it out of straw, one builds it out of sticks, and the other one builds it out of bricks, right? Well, the one with the bricks survives, right? It's the one that built it out of bricks knows what the hell's going on. Just like you freaking put your money in physical coinage, knows what's going on. You're not putting it into electronic fluff with suits. Now, I want to say something else about the currency itself, and there's another angle that I think it's coming up that's unexpected. And this is this. I don't know. And by the way, I don't know if this mic is making noise or shit again. I know this mic I got on this thing sometimes makes noise. Maybe it's not too bad today. So I had to do this over again. But if it's making noise, I'm going to say screw it on this thing. But maybe it ain't. But that's because I'm using XP. I hate Bill Gates. I hate Windows 7. Windows 7 ain't too bad. I hate Windows 8. And I ain't getting Windows 10. So I'm holding an old bomber freaking computer here, and I don't use my new ones. But anyway, on the currency itself, a lot of things with the currency, it's psychological. Like, it's like, we're used to seeing a dollar. We're used to seeing Ben Franklin. We're used to seeing Alexander Hamilton. We're used to seeing George Washington on our money. So now they're talking about taking Alexander Hamilton off the freaking $20 bill, right? And I'm like, I don't know what the hell. They got some reason for it or some shit. He's sexist or something. What is he? I don't know. What is he? He had a slave? Or maybe it was George Washington. But didn't George Washington have slaves? Didn't Abraham Lincoln even have slaves or some shit? I think they all did, didn't they? I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, you take them all off there and say, well, we're going to put everybody else on there. We could put on the Peanuts gang, Linus, we put Linus, Charlie Brown, and Lucy, and Pigpen, and whatever else, Snoopy, right? We could put that on the bill. But the thing is, psychologically, you're going to look at this thing and you're going to say, it's not the same. To me, it's like, a good example of this thing is everything's marketing. I mean, that's really what drives YouTube, right? I mean, why the hell is YouTube even allow you to monetize videos, right? Because it's marketing, right? I mean, marketing works. People see stuff, they see ads, they go, oh yeah, I got to buy that, right? Well, it's like that with the dollar, though. It's like, that's why I think even if they got rid of paper money, that would be a mistake. But when they change the face of the paper money, that's been that way for umpteen decades or 100 years or more, that's a major freaking problem. Like they're going to change the $20 bill around. I'm thinking that's a very commonly used bill. The hundreds don't even use the hundreds as much or the 50s as much, but the 20s, a lot of people use a lot of the 20s. They change that around. A lot of people are going to look at that like, man, what the hell? It's going to have a psychological imprint. It's almost like, when you got a winning formula, you don't freaking screw with it. Could you imagine, like, when it came out with the 64 Mustang, basically that was a Ford Falcon, right? That's really what the hell it was. But, nobody wants a Ford Falcon. They want a Mustang because it's got the body style. It looks like this. It's got a little horse on it. It says Mustang. It looks cooler. Actually, it's a Ford Falcon, right? The early ones were, right? They're the same thing. But say, for instance, if the 64 and 65, say they came out with a 66 Mustang and said, well, we're going to call it the Giraffe. We're not going to call it the Mustang. We're going to call it the Giraffe. We're going to get rid of the freaking Mustang symbol. We're going to put a giraffe on it, and we're going to change the whole body. Well, you know what? You'd kill your sales, man. I mean, it'd be doing worse than the Falcon, right? That's why, you don't screw around with some shit when you got a winning formula. I mean, whatever the hell the U.S. is doing, I mean, people, maybe it's not strong underneath underneath the facade. But the thing is, it's like if you start changing the facade, it's like saying, Coca-Cola is going to change its whole labeling and, oh, they're not going to have a red and white can anymore. It's not going to be written like this. We're going to change it to, orange and purple or some shit. And the letters are going to be like, real block letters or something. And we're going to change the name to, Cock-a-doodle or something. Nobody buy it. It's the same thing. So, I mean, it's the same thing like, the currency is like a corporate logo. I mean, FedEx comes out and says, oh, FedEx, we're not going to have orange and blue, whatever the hell it is. And we change the whole thing around. We change your name. That's what they're doing. If they're going to change the face of the currency. They're morons. Treasury Lou is a freaking moron. I can't believe they're that stupid. But who cares? I don't give a shit. Have fun, though, yo-yos. That's why I'm kind of sitting back. I'm saying, good, let it shit collapse. I don't give a shit. That's why I'm out of the accounting. Well, mostly out of the accounting field. I know it's more lucrative, but then when the crap happens, I rather, I got a lot more shit done in the last few years being mostly out of the accounting field and kind of like into YouTube, but still in the accounting field. And I know it's not been more lucrative that way to do that, but I know that, I prepped a lot more this way. That's why I'm thinking. And, people out there that are actually, well, I'm not one of the people like on YouTube throwing pixie dust at you. I don't like try to scare the crap out of people. But on this video, I'm just going to tell you the reality situation. It is grave. It's bad. And it's not just Wall Street. It's not just politics. Man, it's just all throughout society, man. I mean, it's like, you'll see a line, going to the Giant Stadium for hours and scalpers out there getting hundreds of dollars for some bullshit game. But, somebody's too lazy to go buy some tools or do something on their own or whatever, I mean, they won't buy a generator ahead of time for, like, Hurricane Sandy if they needed it, right? Remember when that happened? The government will take care of it. What's the governor going to do? Yeah, whatever. So, I mean, get a kickstart on your motorcycle. I would love that. But, a lot of people getting stuff just to be me, to be special, do this. It's all a big show, a big act. Like if you look on Facebook, a lot of times people talk about they bought this, they went there, they had a vacation. It's all fluff. Like I said, you got to really stick with the 3 F's: food, firepower, and fuel, and then silver. And then after that, you might want to have generators, tools, whatever, things like that. Something, lumber, pressure-treated lumber, or whatever, different things like that to help you survive in your day-to-day environment. But I do think the situation is going to be very grave. There's actually, when there's not going to be like this, I don't think there's going to be one major reset that's going to collapse everything. There's going to be a series of things. There might be bigger ones than other things, but when it happens, a lot of people are going to wind up getting off the grain dole. And, if they're not paid, if the government people aren't paid, they're not going to work. And when that happens, that's it. It's going to be dominoes. Yeah, they might keep the system going longer by streamlining it, simplifying it. They'll have less money coming in. Like the government's not going to go away, but it's not going to have anywhere near the same type of strength. And people looking to the government for all the answers, they're not going to have any answers because they're not going to be able to provide for them. So, until Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton get out there with a tractor and a backhoe, they're just blowing smoke up your wazoos. And that includes like people like Trump too. I mean, everybody thinks this guy's going to save the earth. This guy's, I don't know, he's been talking one way for 20-something years. In the last 2-3 years, he talked another way. And I'm thinking, well, really, what did you do, buddy? So, anyway. But in the end, what's going to happen is the ones that are prepared, they're going to survive. They're going to be the ones that thrive. And most people are not. That's really the reality situation of it. There's nothing you can really do about it because you got to save yourself before you can freaking even help others. And if it means you're going to help somebody first before you freaking, secure your own survival, and that means you go down with them, what are you going to do about it, right? I mean, people are going off the cliff and they're mocking you for being a jerk by putting some stakes in the cliff so you don't, and some rope so you don't slide down and fall off, buying silver or something as one of your, feel-safe things. And they're mocking you for this and you're telling you're a jerk or whatever. Well, when that's something that happens to them, I mean, you don't want to lose all your shit just because they were freaking, causing, their stupidity. There's nothing you can be able to do about it. And, this is what even happens. A lot of people used to wonder why, like in certain countries, you'd see these starving people on the street and other people walking by, they're fine. Well, it's like, there's only so much you can freaking do. There's only so much you can do. You try to help everybody, what happens is everybody's dead. That's the reality situation. That's a hard reality. And, these doom and gloomers aren't, I'm not being doom and gloomer here, but I'm telling the reality. It's like these doom and gloomers are just being fear mongers for profit. I know that. I mean, they're dragging them out of the woodwork right now because, the stock market went down, but this is even nothing. It's probably going to go down a lot more than that. Even Granham Management says this is just the beginning. That's what he thinks. I think it's true. I think it's going to come down a lot more than that. Probably come down to maybe Well, if you look at, really where it came up from, it should have been down a lot more, and we're probably in a long-term downtrend on the stock market. The last time we had long-term downtrend in the stock market was from 29 to the late 50s. From 1929, the stock market did not recover till the late 50s, over 20-something years later. It might be 25 years before the stock market recovers from the next crash. This was just, a lot of people aren't counting on that. They're thinking it might be a few years like this last time. Nope. The last time we got moving up in the stock market because that was a fix by the Fed. The Fed created a bubble in the stock market. But, that's not the real essence of the rot in this nation. The real essence of this rot in this nation is we lack the rugged individualism and can-do entrepreneur attitude. And we also have a lot of people that just don't want to get their hands dirty. They're looking for the government to fix everything. Until that stops, we're not going to turn around as a whole. Now, I definitely am not in that camp. I can tell you that right now. I mean, certain things I want to do. I want to go out there and do more work on my El Camino, but, Florida's been like raining like crazy, and I kind of do stuff underneath where it doesn't rain. So yesterday I did a little bit of welding when the sun was out. But it's like I'm always doing something, man. I'm always doing something. I'm always building something. I'm always prepping something. Always. Constantly. All the time. 15 hours a day or more. So, but I realized that, most people are pretty much glued to, entertainment, Netflix, and garbage like that. Whereas in my case, I'm trying to research true and accurate information, sift through the garbage, give it to you, plus also give you some tidbits on how you can save some money in a real situation and how-to things. Because when it comes right down to it, like I said, GDP is not a true reflection of the economy. Say, for instance, somebody comes along to these two kids and they say, well, I could fix your scooter for like $3,000. Well, somebody got $3,000 in their pocket, and the GDP went up by $3,000, right? Well, this kid is over here saying, well, I can fix it myself. So nothing went, GDP-wise, nothing happened, right? No $3,000 got into the economy because, he just fixed it himself. But I know the policy of the government could fix the economy in a lot of ways if they actually went ahead and put the money into the middle class and said, we're going to do, even if they did something like FDR did. I know that was a little communistic or socialistic in a way, but the guy was actually, that wasn't a bad thing. When he got, I know a lot of things were unconstitutional, it turned out to be that way, but when he actually says, we're going to create infrastructure with a dam, like during FDR's time, they built the Hoover Dam. They also built the Blue Ridge Parkway going through like the Carolinas and stuff, and Virginia. That was one of the things they built. That was one of the projects. And then later on with Eisenhower, they built the interstate system with the highway system, which supposedly was more for the military, but it was almost like the roads of Rome were for the military, but it turned out it would help the commerce greatly. Now, if Obama did that, sure, but the guy's not going to. They're all working against us. But if the government went into debt for giving us basic, putting American people to work, building infrastructure, fixing our bridges and stuff, it wouldn't be so bad. Because all these people will be spending the money in the economy. But America went into debt for just hooking up the too bigs to fail. And the too bigs to fail have reinvested their money into the equities and like artwork, classic cars, classic bikes, prime real estate. And they created bubbles in all those areas. And a lot of those areas are going to come down. So anyway, that's the reality situation. And, I've probably been long on this, and hopefully this video doesn't have scratchy audio, but might. But I don't know. I'm gonna look into this. I'll probably get another computer, man. I'll be like, I gotta get another XP computer, man. I'm like, it's not that I don't like. Well, I hate freaking Windows 8, and I'm not going Windows 10. And I'll get Windows 7 and put Classic Shell on it, but I hate the You know, I'm really disgusted with Microsoft, man. I'm like, I don't want to buy any of their crap anymore. I used to like them back in the 80s and 90s, or in 90s actually, 90s and 2000. No more. I hate them now. So I'm not upgrading on anything. That's why I use the old banger computer, and sometimes, even though I got a bunch of computers, I use this old one, and sometimes, and hopefully it's got good sound. But if it don't, I'm just gonna let this video fly as it is. So sorry, man. So, but I think I did give you a lot of good information.